Good evening. Reverend David Stensky from God's Bible Church will be leading us with the invocation this evening. If you'd like to join us, please stand at this time. It'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow our heads as we pray. Dear and wise, loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself. Thank you for the measure of health that we need to fulfill our callings and for sustenance. Thank you for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you as well for the freedom to embrace you or the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us and for your boundless and graceless nature. In the Holy Scriptures you said that citizens ought to obey the governing authorities because you have established those authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore I pray for our mayor and for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is a good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest and disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I also pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in our beloved great city of Port Huron. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call to order the meeting on Monday, December the 9th. If the clerk would please take the roll.
Councilmember Archibald?
Here.
Councilmember Ashford?
Present.
Councilmember Beeden?
Here.
Councilmember Harris?
Here.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Here.
Councilmember Warden?
Here.
Mayorette?
Here. You have the minutes from the regular meeting of November the 25th. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Pemberton. Is there a
Second.
second?
Second.
Councilmember Harris. Is there any additions, deletions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. One nay. It passes, though. Public hearings. We have one public hearing. If the clerk would please read it.
To hear comments on Code Case 17-0001, located at 1103 Cedar Street, to determine whether it constitutes a nuisance as defined by City Code. Following the hearing, Council will consider approving the immediate demolition of the structure for listed violations.
I wonder if before we open it up to the audience, if we could have just a little brief oversight on this one, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Rep, and Council. The property that we have before you tonight has been an issue in the neighborhood since 2016. At that time, there was a fire in which there was heavy damage throughout the second floor of the property, basically gutting the second floor and the rafters and supports for the roof system. At that time, we were working with the property owner and gaining the necessary repairs. We had received $12,500 as part of the insurance program that we were able to hold. That money is being held either for the demolition of the property if repairs are not made, or it could be used for the necessary repairs if need be. And if the property owner would repair the property, we would then return that money. Subsequently, after working into 2 work agreements with the property owner, we have not had any resolve to this property. We have sat down with them on numerous occasions and had assurances that they would be moving forward. They did make some efforts in the repair on the roof. Unfortunately, the quality of the repair was such that even when we had contacted tradesmen to come in and to use our $12,500, afford the repair of the roof and the exterior and the windows, the prior repairs were of such poor quality that the contractors did not feel confident that they could make the necessary repairs and then have it be safe for the occupants going forward. Because what had happened is, as the roof was being pulled off by the prior owner, they didn't provide the necessary supports on the sidewalls, and the sidewalls were pushing out. So the necessary ties and going across and the stringers were such that it could no longer support the walls, and the contractors weren't confident that they could go forward and make the necessary repairs. Since that time, we met with the homeowners once again, trying to find a way to have the house repaired. They even looked at having possibly outside investors and construction loans, but all of this has still resulted in the house not being completed. It's still in this very similar state to what it was 2-3 years ago. So we're bringing it before you as a nuisance property and for your consideration.
Thank you. I'll ask for the audience first, and then if the council has any questions, they can ask, okay? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the council on this public hearing relative to the house on Cedar Street? Please give us your name and address.
Jim White, 1011 Cedar. We appreciate everything everybody's done. David's worked very hard. I think it's very evident that the intention was never really there, or the ability to do it. Since I got involved in this from day one, my desire is so that the city officials have more leeway in the future to do something quicker. It's not mentioned that there was a meth lab in that second floor. I'm not sure that there was ever an inspection of it, so maybe in the future, when there's a house like this, you guys can put some laws on the book that help the city a little bit more with short time limits from the standpoint of once a permit's pulled, because this isn't a homeowner fixing a home, this is a nuisance fire. You know, they should have a limited time from the time they get their insurance money till they start until they finish, and maybe some set parameters in their inspections, because the gentleman with me is a builder that lives next door, and he knew the roof was not correctly fixed, so I'll turn it over to him now.
Thank you.
My name is Jared Markey, 1109 Cedar, directly next door to this house. Again, I appreciate everything that's been going on. David's been, keeping a pretty close eye on it. It's just the audacity of the guy that owns the house. It was a Sunday afternoon. One of the contractors said, "Hey, can I plug in my extension cord? I'll throw you a couple bucks." "Yeah, no problem." Never got any money. It's fine. The next day, my fiance's home. I'm going to work. They have the audacity. They're over there running like 6, they had power strips and everything plugged in. My lights are blinking. My fiance goes outside to question him. He goes, "Oh, give us 10 more minutes. We need a couple more cuts." It's just how this guy is. He's not a great person, and even the audacity to tell my fiance, "No, leave me plugged in for another 10 minutes so I can keep," no, I'm giving you my electricity just as a neighbor, just trying to get rid of this mess, It's just, even tonight I was pulling in my driveway and there's cats and raccoons and all kinds of animals running in and running out of the house. It's just, it's a nuisance, and it's not getting any better. And the guy comes over there, he works like crazy hours, 2-3 in the morning. Thankfully, he's not running his generator, but I mean, my sister works at the hospital, and she comes home late sometimes. She lives with us, and she's like, "There's people over at the house at 3-4 in the morning." She's like, "What are they doing?" God knows. So I'm just sick of it. Again, I'm really happy with what you guys have done. I'm just hoping this goes through and we can just get this demolished. I mean, I work in the restoration industry. We deal with fires all the time. It's usually 6 months from they're burned to they're back and people are moved in. It's just outstanding. I mean, this has been so long going on that it's just been dragged out, and this guy just keeps getting away with doing the little as possible, and I got to look at it every night. I pull in my driveway, and I'm like, the house is still there. So, I mean, it'd just be nice to see this taken care of, and either, if it can be demolished, that'd be great. If they decide they can save it and, maybe hopefully get new owners, just so we don't have any kind of clientele like he was, housing in there. It would just be awesome to see this move forward and either torn down or, rehabbed and into a much nicer building that I don't have to look at this mess every day. So, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the city council on this public hearing? Seeing no one else, I'll declare the public hearing closed and ask for a motion from council to
So
approve.
moved.
Thank you. I just closed the public hearing, but you can come forward.
Well, I'm that infamous owner that everybody's talking about here, and these stories don't seem to...
Would you give us your name for the record, though, please?
My name is Thomas Abdu.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
The first holdup on the house was the insurance company. I mean, 2 years it was, we battled with them, I mean, before we even got it settled. That's to start it off. Contractor come in, took money and didn't do anything with the house, left me hanging with it. I mean, the incident with the power cord, that was somebody that was working there. I don't know exactly what happened, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's news to me, what I just heard. I don't know what else to say. I just tried to negotiate with the city. We sat down. I said, give myself a short period of time to do it, and we had a snowstorm come in. The guys just wouldn't get on the roof. I mean, it took, most of the time, was ate up with the snow on the property. It looks terrible right now, but it was shut down once again. I mean, it's been tagged, so we can't even work on it until we negotiate something. And then the negotiations are, you know what I mean, they weren't, there wasn't ample enough time. And then with the snowstorm, it just blew it. I mean, there was no way to complete it within that short period of time. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it's not something I really want to, this isn't, I mean, it's something I plan. I enjoy doing this to the neighbors. I mean, I do get a lot of slack from the neighbors. I mean, and I understand it. But the harassment of the guys that are there prior, not recently, but prior, I mean, calling the police constantly to pull everybody over when they leave, I mean, for one thing, just, there's several things, I mean, that's went on. If somebody has interest in buying the property, that I believe, I mean, has something to do with it, I don't know. There's someone that lives right there. Now, the next door house, I don't know who owns it now, if it was sold. When they built that house, I provided power without, I mean, for 6 weeks, without saying a word, just trying to be friendly, neighborly. And that was several years ago, but I mean, it may not have anything to do with the gentleman that lives there now, you know. And I mean, I can only apologize to you for what, I mean, it's not intentional, by all means. I don't know what to say. That's all I can tell you. I mean, I'm just asking, you know, there's a company that has interest in the house, there's a mortgage on it now. So, I mean, that's another issue that stands.
Well, we will have the item before us, and then we'll have the item before us, and then we'll talk about it at that time. So if that's all your comments, and we aren't going back and forth with you.
No, that's fine. I just want to be able to say something.
Yeah,
I mean,
nope, that's fine.
I'm sorry, I really have bad hearing, and then the ringing, so I have a hard time
Okay.
even understanding what was said, you know, earlier. Just so you know, I'm not, you know.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, I could only ask until the first of the year to try and resolve this. Consider it, that's all I'm asking,
Thank you.
okay?
Support the motion, you didn't have a support yet.
Yeah, I'm closing the public hearing up first, and I do have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. Are you saying, Councilmember Ashford, you're
Support.
supporting it? So we do have a motion on the floor right now for immediate demolition of the structure. Is there discussion? Any questions?
Mayor Rep,
Councilmember Harris.
you know, I've paid some visits over that property last part of the summer, and then here just a few weeks ago, and it was during that period of time where we thought we were going to meet with the city building inspector over that, and for somehow or another the communications got lost. But basically at that time the city, the building department and stuff basically said that they had some kind of a movement going that we could get this thing expedited along. And, you know, you go over there and I challenge anybody to take a look and just comparison with like the house on Lincoln Avenue. I just can't even imagine spending less than $50,000 on this house to get it livable and in the conditions necessary. Unfortunately, it's in a nice neighborhood. It's a quiet neighborhood, and the property is of some value. But as a residence or repaired residence, I just can't see it a good fit.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments? Well, certainly this has been going on for a long period of time, so I understand the neighbors' frustration, and you can see by the report that a lot of notices and times have been given in order to have it resolved. So at this point, I think that we have no choice but to
Yeah.
vote for demolition.
Mayor, yeah, before you go there, too, the documentation on behalf of the city planning is very outstanding, where you tried to work with him every step of the way. So it's not like you didn't try to work with him. And so that was a good faith effort, and so we did our part.
Is there any other comments? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes?
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Now is the time for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the city council on any item on the agenda or that we have jurisdiction over, please feel free to come to the podium. You have 4 minutes. Please give us your name and address.
Hello, my 4 minutes start after I do this part. Kevin Watkins, Wells Township. Made a trip about 30 minutes here to be here tonight. Regarding to that public hearing, I don't really know all the details there, but I know if Mr. Warden voted yes, you did research that very carefully. My minutes start. I am here tonight and concerned. I heard something very, very exciting last week or a week before last at the meeting where our city manager, Freed, he was here with Mr. Kramer, CEO of SC4, to give a presentation on the Heinz Field in regards to the soccer team. The SC4 is bringing the soccer team, men's and women's, 2020. Purchased the Heinz Field to build use for a soccer field for SC4. And then I'm guessing I'm hearing that that's a problem. I'm very concerned about that because City Manager Freed gave a wonderful presentation, supplemented with what Mr. Kramer was saying. So the point I'm making here is that I'm a little concerned. I like what I see in what you're doing in regards to something like what I tell my students to do. You trust what you validate. When you validate, they make research, you ask questions, etc. And that's a good thing. But I would request and hope that the council and the city manager and others will, take heed to that and be careful not to overdo that. And always keep in mind that we must support our college. That college is the jewel of St. Clair County, and we have to allow the growth of the college. And now I know if they pull back on that, if that's what I'm hearing, that what are we going to do if they already plan to have a soccer team here in 2020? They have to have someone in practice, even if they have the games in other places. And first, I'm looking at with the city manager, with our great city council, those involved with Don Fletcher and Blue Meets Green, how our city's been very much thriving, looking from 2007 to 2019. I look at it always as a trilogy. That's the first part of the trilogy. And then we have, with our city manager and, of course, our council working with the college, to help the college expand. We have a new dormitory. I'm sure there's great other plans to create this great college here in St. Clair County with a university field. That's the second part of our trilogy. The third part, which was key, was with leadership with Jamie Kane at the school district, our bond committee, which I was a part of, that we worked hard to get a $100+ million bond passed. Now the trilogy is complete. As far as we are a thriving district, we're a thriving city, which will expand to our extended connected municipalities, and hopefully it's going to be the region. So I'm very concerned when I hear rumblings or issues with the college being blocked and not being able to expand where it needs to be. What's important, I want to bring up something that's interesting and go back in time. Historians would know this, in 1787, when Benjamin Franklin arose from Constitution Hall, and a woman asked him, "What do you have in front of you, a monarchy or a republic?" And he stated, "A republic if you can keep it." I ask you here in 2019, what do we have here in Port Huron? We have a thriving community that is stretched beyond our municipalities near us and throughout the county. And what I say to you is that we have this thriving community if you can keep it. So please keep that in mind when we're dealing with our college, and let that college grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council this evening?
Hi, my name is David Stensky. I live in Golden Crest Court, 2914. I have a question. I was hoping I could get about this agenda on the Resolution 8 about the police officers, how they have only 2 resource officers. Is that just for the high school? Is that for all schools through the whole Port Huron school system? Or do they have a presence? What I'm asking is, do the police officers have a presence in all the schools in the district? Is there access to them? And I'd like to know what as if they made a difference as well. Is there any kind of data?
We will talk about that when the item
And that's
comes
something
for
I'd like
us.
to, that's
Yep.
just something I'd like to find out.
Okay, we'll talk about that
Thank
at
you.
that time. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening? Declare public comment closed, and we will move on with the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Support.
We have a first move and a support, so we'll take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, the items on the consent agenda, communications, we received and filed a notification from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission that an application has been received to transfer location of a 2019 watercraft licensed business with 110 passengers, a Sunday sales permit and specific purpose permit to 207 Water Street. Another notification from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission that an application has been received from Port Huron Hospitality Holdings, LLC, to add a new SDM license in conjunction issued non-transferable at 800 Military Street and 405 Water Street. And received and filed notification that Mia Sutherland has been appointed by the city manager to the Port Huron Housing Commission to fill a vacancy that expires on December 19th, 2024. And a resolution approving revisions to various sections of the Lakeside Cemetery rules. And those are the items that were on the consent agenda. We will move to from the city manager, number 1.
Receive and file the comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30th, 2019.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Councilmember Ashford, supported by Councilmember Pemberton. And if the city manager would please lead the discussion on this?
Yep, Madam Mayor and Council, before you have our annual audit report, a copy of it for you to review. I want to thank Ed Brennan and Bobby Seppo and his dedicated team. The vast majority of these documents are, again, put together by our finance department, which I see Ed's car here on Sundays and Saturdays and late into the night as him and his team put this together. Of course, it's audited, and tonight we have with us our auditors from Plant Moran, who will put on a brief presentation to what the contents they found.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. As the City Manager said, we go through a very exhaustive audit process to go through this document, but it really is now almost 200 pages that's put together entirely by your Finance Department. My name is Lisa Planka. I'm an audit partner in the governmental practice for Plant Moran, and with me tonight is Amanda Kronk, who's a Senior Manager and responsible for oversight of the audit process itself. We do have a brief presentation with some financial highlights that Amanda will walk us through in a minute, but just some brief overall comments. Again, we also would like to thank Ed Brennan and Bobby Seppo and the cooperation that we receive from all departments throughout the city, since we do touch a lot of different departments in going through this audit process. Excuse me. Overall, in the current year, So the main contribution that we have to this audit report is our opinion, which again this year is a clean audit opinion or an unmodified opinion, meaning that everything contained in this large comprehensive annual financial report is in accordance with all of the various governmental accounting standards that would be applicable to the city of Port Huron. So that is the highest level of assurance that we can provide, and certainly what you would expect to see each year as a result of the audit. We did issue a separate letter with overall observations on the audit, which I'll cover after Amanda goes through the financial statement highlights, and then also offered up just some updates on legislative comments or legislative happenings at the state level, and then also some upcoming accounting pronouncements. From a very high level, you'll see in the financial report, we continue to see, looking at a 5-year trend, very common themes among all of our communities within Southeast Michigan. Certainly continued, we'll call it stabilization or reliability of revenue sources, which is different from what we would have been here, say, 10 years ago talking about to you. So that certainly is a positive, but then still on the negative side, really seeing communities, City of Port Huron included, still trying to address capital and infrastructure needs, and also tackling those legacy costs, those retiree health care and pension benefits that we've talked about a lot, and we'll discuss the funded status of those plans. So we continue to recommend that our communities are looking out a couple of years ahead and doing financial projections really to see what the impact is, if there are changes to revenue sources or we see an economic downturn coming, so that that can be addressed, and really looking at those legacy costs and how to look at the funded status of those plans. So with that, I will hand it over to Amanda to walk us through the slides, but please feel free to ask questions along the way.
Thank you.
Great. I am going to start off by giving you a summary of the general fund revenue. So this first slide here, as you can see, you have 5 major revenue streams. Again, this is similar to in the past. But what I did want to point you to is the taxes group of columns. So you'll see that gray or bluish bar did spike up quite a bit this year. As you know, that's related to the 2 new millages that were passed in 2017 related to police and fire and parks and recreation. So those 2 new millages accounted for an increase of $2.2 million. So the reason why that's so important is you won't see this increase year over year. So that really was kind of resetting your base, if you will. And as you all know, your property tax revenue really is limited by Proposal A and Headley. So don't lose sight and don't think that your revenue is going to continue increasing by that. But that really is what accounts for that increase. Now, one other thing to note in the taxes section there, that does include your income tax revenue as well. That did have a modest increase of approximately 2% or $126,000. So those things coupled together really do represent the largest increase to your revenue stream that you had. As you see, the other 4 categories there are relatively consistent with no anomalies to note. Next slide, I'd like to touch on the general fund expenditures. So as you can see here, your largest category is your public safety. So again, police, fire, things of that nature. That category did have a slight increase, which really is due to wage increases along with fringe benefit increases. So again, not unpredicted and unpredictable, but worth noting. The remaining categories you'll see there relatively consistent, no anomalies to note, other than perhaps in that other column. If you look at just the dollar amounts, it might beg the question what happened there. Just to point out, you did have 2 relatively larger projects occur in the general fund, one related to the Pine Grove Park improvements and the other related to the Lakeside Park Pavilion improvements. Those would be in that other category there in the $870,000. Next, I'd like to tie the revenues and the expenditures together to arrive at your fund balance. So as you can see, these 2 columns being relatively neck and neck is good news for the city. So you're definitely living within your means, if you will. And 2019 is no different. So the general fund did add approximately $21,000 to its fund balance after all transfers. So again, your fund balance is hovering close to $5 million. So what does that mean to the city council? Well, the good news is that almost all of that $5 million is what we call unassigned. So that means it's available for city operations, city needs, throughout the city. So that really comes with no restrictions. That is the case today and has been the past few years. So the reason we bring that up is while you're hovering around that same $5 million number, it's still important to think about, as Lisa mentioned, what are your future needs? What are your plans for the next couple years? And continuing the trend that you're on as it relates to your general fund. Taking maybe a little step into the broader area, looking at all of your governmental funds. So this slide really depicts your total governmental fund balance as it compares to your total expenditures for those funds. As you can see in that 2019 column, your fund balance is just over $20 million. And this slide will show you how that's broken down and how it's able to be spent. So again, I mentioned the only unassigned, or the only piece that's available for operations and things like that really is the $4.8 million in your general fund. The other sources are either non-spendable, meaning they've already been spent, or restricted by third parties. So keeping that in mind when you're setting those budgets is certainly important. Now, when you look at the 2019 column, again, your fund balance is your fund balance is just over $20 million, with your annual expenditures around $35 million. So, again, that's a healthy level, but don't lose sight of the fact that you'll want to keep an eye on that as you're budgeting. Taking one step broader, perhaps, we wanted to spend a few minutes talking about your government-wide or your full accrual statements. Now, this really adds in your long-term assets, being capital in nature, and your long-term liabilities. So those liabilities that Lisa mentioned related to your OPEB, or your retiree health care, and your pension. So your assets are in the column on the left. And again, you can see that this column is a little bit shorter than the liabilities column. So that means that the city has more debt owed, or more liabilities owed, than it has assets. Now, your government-wide, your governmental activities is in a deficit of $12 million. And as Lisa mentioned, this isn't uncommon for communities similar to the city of Port Huron, and certainly other local units in Michigan. These two large liabilities have really impacted everyone in about the same manner. So you see running governmental activities deficits as a result of these two liabilities. So again, this isn't anything that is a surprise to any of you. We've been talking about it for a few years now. Certainly has been a priority. So just again, keeping your eye on the ball and keep working toward funding those liabilities. A similar conversation here on your business type, which includes your enterprise funds. However, the story, as you can see, has a little different shade. So your assets are primarily made up of your infrastructure. So your assets in this case do outweigh and exceed your liabilities. However, that's all tied up in the infrastructure and the capital that it takes to run those systems. So that's not necessarily liquid cash, but those systems do carry a lot of capital. So that's why the asset column is higher than your liabilities. Now, one thing I did want to point out in your liabilities column, you'll see that the pension and OPEB liabilities are significantly less in your enterprise funds, and that's due to how they're allocated. So those liabilities are based on salary and wages spent in your enterprise funds, so that's how they're reported here as well. This next slide adds the two previous slides together. This is just giving you the outlook of the entire city. So all activities would be combined in these columns, giving the city a net position of almost, or just over $65.5 million. Wanted to spend a few minutes talking about pension and the annual required contribution that the city is required by the state to make. So the darker columns here represent your actual contributions, so you've already outflowed the cash. The columns to the right, or the orange shaded columns, represent contributions that are estimated by your actuary. So the city is estimated in this next fiscal year to be required to make a $6 million contribution, which, as you can see, goes up from there. So again, we bring this up not as, trying to continue to talk about this issue, but continuing to focus on the reality and the contributions you will need to make, and certainly keeping those in mind as you're funding your current service costs earned by your employees, along with previous unfunded service costs. One comment I did want to tack on, so this, in 2019, the city did make an extra contribution of $500,000 and has done so in the past couple years. So again, that just shows that you're focused on it, and certainly focusing on it when you can. Okay, we're going to take a turn from those items and we're going to focus on your water and your wastewater funds. So kind of a little bit different mindset, so I want to give you a couple questions to think about as we're talking about these funds. So one of which is, are the current costs that are being charged to the users of the system covering what it costs the city to run that system? Meaning, is our operating income covering our operating expenses? So question number one is really answered with the left side of this graph. So you'll see that teal bar is higher than the orange bar. So that means that residents are paying their costs that you're expending to run that system. So you have an operating income of $2.4 million. So that really is question number one. Your rates are covering your expenses from that perspective. Question number two is, we're going to focus on the right-hand side of this graph. So question number two really is the cash flow that we're receiving, so the cash being received, does that cover our operating expenses, our debt service payments, and our capital investments that are necessary in the system? So what you'll see here, the revenue bar, again, represents cash inflow, the revenue received by the city. That three shaded bar there on the far right represents your outflows related to the system. So the bottom teal part is depreciation, so that represents the use of your system. Then you have your debt and your capital. So I guess the question that we receive a lot is this bad? Is it bad that the column on the right is higher than the column on the left? The answer is not necessarily. So in any given year, you could be needing to make infrastructure improvements that are planned, right? So you're using your cash and your working capital to make those investments. Now, what we would warn you against is having that far right column be above for multiple years in a row. So you'd certainly want to make sure that you're making planned investments and planned decisions, as we know that you are, and making sure that you're monitoring your cash inflows to your cash outflows. Similar story with your wastewater. Again, you had $3.5 million in operating income, as the graph on the left shows you. The graph on the right, you were short almost $600,000 when you factor in your operating revenue as compared to the outlays. That would include, again, debt and capital outlay. So again, planned decisions, but making sure that you're monitoring those year in and year out to make sure you're not having too many years where that bar on the left exceeds the bar on the right. Are there any questions on the financial results before we get into the audit letter?
Does anyone have any questions?
Question.
Councilmember Ashford.
I would just want to go back to the front page of the general fund. You said the bar I'm under taxes. Okay, and that won't be like that always because of the millage that we just passed here. So what, do you have an estimated timetable? Because I know it acted as a bridge just to get us positioned.
Sure. So I believe that was approved through 2023.
Yeah.
Yep, so five years. So So essentially, that bar on the far, if you're looking at just the taxes section, that far right bar,
Right.
that, you're gonna see that bump up for those few years where you're collecting those 2 extra millages. Now, beyond that, we don't know, but, you won't see another $2.2 million bump up again next year, I guess was what I was, getting at.
So it's going to tell a different story, so,
Yeah, so you're gonna probably plateau now that you've
Right.
had your first year of those 2 new millages.
Right.
You're gonna kind of see it plateau a little bit unless other, certainly other changes can be made that would change that, but, all things expected to stay the same, you wouldn't expect that to go up another $2.2 million.
so we're going to have to be prudent, and we're going to have to counter that shortfall. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you definitely wouldn't want to estimate that significant of an increase again, but you would expect your levels to remain fairly consistent with that new bar, if you will.
Yeah.
Unless again, if there's an economic downturn or things that we can't predict, but all things equal, that would be expected to be your new base, if you will, until those millages run out or.
Okay, and just a comment, great graphics tell the story really well.
Good.
Thank you.
We tried to summarize the 200-page report. We didn't think you wanted us to go through that page by page, so,
This package is just right, yeah.
great.
Any other questions?
Mayor Rep,
Yes, Councilmember
just a
Ward.
quick question on, it's probably page 8 or 9 and 10, just on the right-hand side there, the modified accrual basis. It has the operations, the debt, and the capital outlay on the right. The little debt section, is that just our servicing, like our payments of our debt payments? And does it take, this is just on this annual basis. If we actually had paid, like next year, paid down more of some of the bonds, that those payments would be directly, that would be a lower amount, or would it have the principal payment or the final payment involved in this?
Great question. So this represents your current year debt service payments, so the payments that were made on your debt during the fiscal year. So to your point, if you were to make that decision and pay more off in the next year, that number would go up. So that's just focusing on your current year principal and interest payments.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have a few comments.
Comment you want to make?
Just to add, on page 2, when it speaks to the growth of the departments, that's significantly driven by the fringe benefit rate, which factors in our unfunded liability payments. Again, when I got here in 2014, it was about $3.2 million, and it's $6 million this year. We were finalizing our financial transformation plan, which we will take to the state treasurer on the 16th of this month, and we will go for bonding in February, which will reduce those payments back below $5 million and keep them at $5 million for the remaining 30 years. If you look at the assets and liabilities, what's significant to note, whereas when I was in the private sector, we had a similar type of assets and liabilities, but if I needed, I could sell a plant or a printing press for cash. You can't sell streets, you can't sell sidewalks. Nobody wants to sell all of our city assets, and I don't think there's someone who wants to buy Pine Grove unless make you want a toll road. So unlike the private sector where you could liquidate assets to generate cash flow if need be, we really don't have that ability. So I think it's important to note that the assets and liabilities, the OPEBs and the pension liability is much more significant than it would be in a private sector as well. Also, when I got here in 2014, I use it as a point of reference because it's the only time I was educated, is we had our CSO debt was around $120 million. Today, that's going to drop below $60 million this year. So we anticipated about $12 million in principal and interest payment. Of that, $7 million in principal, $5 million in interest. We have a horizon of when that begins to, just like your mortgage begins to ride down, that will begin to ride down in 24 to 36 months, about $1.2, $1.3 million annually. That money hopefully will allow us to maintain a pay-as-we-go. So you'll see less of the new debt and outlay being paid for with additional bonds. You'll still use some, there's appropriate things to do long-term financing on. You want the users over the 30-year lifespan of that asset to pay their fair share, not just everyone today. So we'll still utilize that tactic. But as that debt principal payment begin to drop over the next 24 to 36 months, you will see a winding down of new debt and a more pay-as-we-go model, which is much more sustainable. So it's important to note that we've now had that bill significantly dropped. We will have that reflected in our payments moving forward. So, yeah. And remember, like for 13th Street and Michigan Ave and Quay Street, the streets are done through the street fund. But all that water and sewer infrastructure underneath is paid through, and that's the outlay you're seeing the next year and the previous year we had two other projects as well.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Okay, so as we've said, the separate communication that you received was about a 12-page letter from us that really is our overall comments on the audit. I won't belabor this because Section 1, really, the information in it is very straightforward. Essentially, this tells you qualitatively how did the audit go, not just are the numbers right once we're all done. And so really what this is saying is that the audit went pretty much as we had planned it. We performed everything according to the scope and timing that we communicated. There were no significant surprises or unidentified issues or anything that came up in the course of the audit that was unusual or caused us to have to do additional procedures. So again, that's telling you that the books and records were in good shape when we came out to audit, and the financial information that you're receiving throughout the year is being maintained and given to you in a shape that you would expect. So that's, again, a very clean report that the audit went well, and we had no unusual items or disagreements or significant new accounting standards this year to report to you. So really that concludes our presentation for the evening. We appreciate the time. We appreciate being the auditors for the city, and thank you for the time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good report. We have a motion on the floor to receive and file. Can we take the vote?
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 2.
Receive and file the quarterly financial report for the 3-month period ending September 30th, 2019.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Pemberton, any discussion?
Madam Mayor and Council, the budget is on target. It's early in the year, but we're on target so far.
Okay. Any other discussion? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 3.
Accepting the quote from Fisher Scientific Company, LLC, in the amount of $9,985.71 for an autoclave market-forged Sterilmatic steam pressure sterilizer for use at the wastewater treatment plant.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Beeden?
Madam Mayor and Council, just a brief background. As you all know, and most people don't, we run a very scientific lab in our wastewater plant, and they have to clean their stuff and bring them up to scientific standards so they don't have cross-contamination and they get accurate readings. We had $2,500 in the budget for the repairs, but this is beyond repair, so we will have to replace this for just shy of $10,000. But again, we are running a scientific lab, and you can't have dirty dishes that may not give a positive reading when you're testing people's water and wastewater. So it seems like a lot of money. It's not your typical Lowe's purchase, but it does need to be done.
Thank you. Any questions? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 4.
Approving the 5-year service contract with Otis Elevator Company in the estimated annual amount of $30,000.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Support.
Councilmember Ashford, supported by Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor and Council, a few years ago, you invested $320,000 into the reconstruction of elevator 1 and 2 towards the front of the building. There's also a rear elevator. They are Otis elevators. But in addition to that, they run Otis software on the new computerized elevators in 1 and 2. That is proprietary software with Otis. So it's very difficult to do a maintenance contract with anyone else but Otis because they have proprietary softwares. But this is a fair market price for this type of service and similar to what we've paid in the past.
Any questions, discussion?
Mayor Rep,
Councilmember Harris.
just a comment on this, and I was looking at it because it kind of set me back a little bit when I read this is an estimated service fee. But when I looked at it, and basically the contract is based on the employee wages for that company. I think based on this agreement, it's at $93 an hour, and if they negotiate a higher pay or a lower pay, it'll affect us either positively or negatively. So there is an explanation, so thank you.
I will tell you, when they installed the elevators, it was delayed because they didn't have any technician. We talk about the talent shortage. Apparently, there's not a lot of people willing to climb down multi-story elevator shafts now either. And they run apprenticeship programs, but it's a huge issue is getting people out there. That's why we have some delays with our repairs.
Any other discussion, questions? And we'll take the vote.
Councilmember Warden,
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 5.
Accepting the single source quote from Motorola Solutions Incorporated in the amount of $101,039.25 for the purchase of 19 portable radios for use by the Port Huron Fire Department.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Pemberton.
Madam Mayor and Council, before you, you have a single source bid. They are the only dealer in the state of Michigan for Motorola's, so that's why you only have them. They're using the state bid price. That is the cheapest you can get them. That is the state bid price. We have the current radios were purchased in around 2004, so we've gotten our lifespan out of them. They last a long time. But they are starting to have issues where some of them don't work or they're touch and go. And when you have a firefighter safety issue, they need to make sure that those communications work. So we want to get them replaced before it becomes too much of an issue. If approved tonight, they should be able to get those radios in the first 2 weeks of January. And they will be using 911 funds. There's about $130,000 in that fund currently. So this will take the rest of it for that purpose.
Any questions, discussion?
Mayor Rep, just one question.
Member Harris.
Do these have GPS capabilities to locating a fire?
Do you have
fireman?
GPS in them?
Mayor and council, changes have taken place between, obviously, the mid-2000s and 2019, 2020. Basically, these are mini computers, and that justifies the cost involved. So yes, there is both a GPS module inside the radio as well as a Bluetooth module, which actually will allow the fire ground commander to identify locations of possible downed firefighters.
Good, appreciate it. Protects our firefighters. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mayor Rep?
Councilmember Warden.
Yes, hear me okay? I just want to, again, just kind of upgrade and protect our fire department. And this is a necessary and, I guess, welcome purchase here to keep these guys safe, keep the communication there, and also the safety of our residents with your first responder to getting around the fire. So I appreciate your effort in putting this together, and I'll support this issue.
Anything else? Thank you. We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald,
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford,
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton,
Yes.
Councilmember Warden,
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move to resolutions. Number 1, please.
Authorizing 15 payments.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Ashford. Any discussion or questions?
Question.
Yes, Councilmember Ashford.
We have about 4 change orders, 1.4, 1.6, 1.7, and what's another one? And 1.14. Could you speak to those change orders, someone? Were they on budget or?
Yeah, they're still on budget. Most of them
They're
were
still on budget.
most of them were quantity issues. For instance, the Riverside boat launch, there was more materials needed than originally in the bid specs. So that accounted for the one change order.
Okay.
I'll go through each individual one of them.
Well, you don't have to go
Yeah,
through
but
each
it's
individual.
it's
because
basically, they're
cumbersome. What
yeah,
I
they're-
re-
they're
what I re-
quantity amounts.
Right, what I really want to know is that, was this a design thing or just something that, because I know you do a before you do it, so
It's,
how did the incurrence come?
Using,
I
for
mean,
example, Riverside Boat Launch, once they got in there,
Mm-hmm.
they needed more base level material than they originally budgeted for. But you wouldn't know that until you
Until
opened
you got in
opened
there,
her up and saw it.
Correct. And what about Tetra Tech?
Which one's that?
That's 1.6. It's the same. It's electrical.
Oh, that's for additional engineering because we had a,
Parts.
yeah.
Okay,
We
so it's
changed,
parts.
we changed the design of the switchgear, the building, and the trenching, all that working with
Oh,
DTE.
okay.
Yep.
That's after you went back,
Yep.
predicated on DTE's findings or
Correct.
whatever, okay. And then the reasonable construction service, water filtration plant, roof replacement?
I actually will have to speak to that.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Is this in reference to the mausoleum roof replacement for the 4100?
The water filtration.
The water
roof replacement.
filtration roof?
For the maintenance garage
Yep.
from Sanctum?
Yep.
There was some issues when that project was originally built, or bid. This spring, we brought on BMJ engineers to help us. We worked cooperatively with the contractor to address those issues. They had some responsibilities, city had other, and that's a result of this change order.
To be candid with the mayor and council, there's a reason why we have new leadership in the Public Works Department. This is one of those reasons.
Yeah, and the reason I brought these change orders up is I can see 2,000 and 4,000, whatever, this is like 57,000, 66,000, and we just heard our audit report saying how we had to be prudent as we move forward. So it's just, just to raise our little flags here.
You're 100% right to bring this up. This was something that was necessary to be done, but was not factored in the original contract. It was essentially a design flaw that we should have designed a better building, so we went back and made it right. And then we also made changes of staffing in the Public Works Department to account for it.
Good for you. Okay, so I call action.
Thank you. We will take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 2.
Approving the amendment with SBA Towers Incorporated to the original cell tower lease agreement with Sprint PCS to provide for 4 additional successive terms of 5 years to commence on April 5th, 2029 at the North End Service Center site.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Pemberton, is there a second?
Support? None.
Councilmember Ashford.
Madam Mayor and Council, Legal Counsel has reviewed this. This is for an extension of an already existing cell company. I think it is important that we get this under contract sooner than later. If you remember, back when there was 3G, and then there was 4G, and before that there was something else. But I have previous experiences where I was in a contract negotiations and I was trying to get every single penny out of a antenna. When technology emerges like 3G to 4G, the spectrum changes. So there's a reason why you're seeing less and less cell phone towers on church steeples and on water towers, because as technology emerges, they don't need as many sites. And so a lot of sites that have expired contracts get axed. And so we have a company who is willing to renew a contract for 5 years in an ever-changing market. For instance, the 5G rollout coming, I think it would behoove us to get this contract locked in now for 5 years so we at least know that revenue's coming throughout the rollout. Because I was negotiating with a similar situation in Stanton, and they just walked. So,
Any questions?
Mayor Rapp?
Councilmember Warden.
Just to clarify, is this consecutive 5-year terms, is the total revenue that we're going to be getting out of the city, is that 20,000?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Rapp,
Councilmember
just-
Harris.
I just wanted to respond to city manager. He answered the comment that I was going to ask, who was this good for them or for us? And he said it's good for us, so thank you.
It's just one of those things where it's just with ever-emerging technology, we don't know what's going to, change. We have microcell technology coming out, so I don't know, but I know I got burned once in a previous city. That's all. I'll share my experience.
Are IT people looking at this 5G thing?
Our IT has moved all of our facilities to hardwire fiber for more reliability. Jim used to run a wireless system that's kind of taken down to a little bit minimal now. So we have all of our key sites, our lift stations, our fire departments are all on fiber connectivity now.
Good, thank you.
Question.
Councilmember Ashford.
Is this market value of 20,000 we're getting, is that?
Yeah.
It's popular?
Yep.
Any other questions? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 3.
Approving the vacation of the full-width public utility easement in alley number 249, located in the block bounded by Electric Avenue, Bona Vista Street, Military Street, and Connor Street.
Is there a motion?
So moved. Support.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember Ashford. Is there any discussion?
Just to point out that all the property surrounding this easement is owned by a single owner, so there's not multiple property owners in this, so he's the only person that stands to benefit.
Okay. Any questions? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 4.
Adopting a revised schedule of fees effective January 1st, 2020 for various sections of the Code of Ordinances and other user-specific fees.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Pemberton, is there a second?
Support?
Councilmember Beeden. I wonder if you could address the items that have gone up, which I see
Yes.
is mostly parking and rental?
Yes, absolutely. Our police department is deploying new technology and new software and collecting for tickets and fines, whether that be for parking or the parking violations, so it'll be a more automated, and they will have a company that will actually do the collections for us, which will alleviate administration time. So that additional $3 is to cover that fee that we pass on to the consumer. Also, in the rental certification program, after talking with the landlords, and they've said it time and time again here, it says, why do good landlords pay the same amount as bad landlords? I think that's a fair discussion point. And so instead of raising the rental certification fee, we opted not to do that because good landlords pay their rental certification fee, they get certified, and they go on with their day. It's the bad landlords, which represent about, 30% of our inspections need re-inspections. Of that, several hundred are actual legal issues that we have to go to court and get warrants and search warrants and all that. So what we've done is we have added the tiered for our cost. So our cost of enforcing the rental certification program and inspection program goes up when you need second inspections, when we have to have the lawyer draft a letter, when you give us the wrong mailing address. If you're doing business in this community, you need a proper mailing address so we can communicate with you. For appointments canceled, when we have staff there, for valid complaint inspections, administrative search warrants. We are going to pass our costs, not onto the good landlords, but onto the bad landlords. They pay what it costs to enforce them. And so if you're a good landlord and your things are going well, then this won't affect you in any way.
Then you got some under streets and sidewalks.
Yeah, I believe that was just based on quantity amount. And parking,
And then-
for
yeah.
parking.
And then hydrant charges. That's gone up.
Yes, it has. Just to account for our costs.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Minor increases, $5.
$5,
Yep.
yeah. Any questions from council?
Mayor Rapp? Go ahead.
Yes, Councilmember Harris.
I guess my questions were on these service charges. James answered the one about the unregistered rentals, which is, I got a phone call on that today, and they said they support the landlord association. But I'm looking at some of these fees, like for the water, the service charge, 50% raise in the turn-on service for an unauthorized, and $5 for the other one, and 30. It seems to be kind of a, it don't seem to be a rhyme for reason for one. If it was like a percentage of the 25 or percentage of the original 100 or the 195, but the 100 goes to 150 where the 25 only goes up to 30. So I just wonder if what's kind of the reason where these are jumping over the place?
Our cost of actually doing it, so wage increases and fringe benefit raises for the workers, the overtime pay for going out after hours, that's what's driving most of it.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor Rep?
Councilmember Warden.
First, just in the rental certification section, I guess the title search, owner investigation, you already mentioned the explanation of that. But the question I have down here is in the reinspection, appointment first canceled, that does happen, no charge. But then subsequent cancellation, is that something that the homeowner or landlord has set the appointment with the inspection department?
Correct.
And then
Not shown up.
they haven't, okay, the landlord hasn't? Okay, it's nothing to do with the actual, if a tenant's not letting them in, okay. And then the valid complaint inspection, can you explain what that, a valid complaint inspection for $100?
So if we have a complaint filed on the property, and we send an inspector out, and the complaint is legitimate, whether that be a safety issue, a code issue, then that would be a valid complaint.
Oh, so
for instance, if a tenant calls me up and says, or calls us up and says, my smoke detectors don't work, or my electrical GFI outlets don't work, and we send an inspector out there upon their request and it is valid, then that is a valid inspection.
So the landlord would be notified?
Correct.
In advance of that before?
Yes.
To rectify it, probably in between, I'm guessing that's in between certification inspections.
Correct.
The past before, every year or 2 years or 4 year, whatever time frame, and now they're getting hey, we can't get this fixed?
Correct.
Give a little, I would hope that the city gives a little
We do.
understanding to the landlord first before putting a $100 fine. So the other thing is down in the section, just a couple down here, operating fees, I know the $60, but the final, a notice of final violation per week is at $250 per week. And then it says failure to correct the final violation notice is $500 per week. And it just keeps going until it's correct. I mean,
Correct.
This is already on the books. And then a letter sent. Okay, so that gives them incentive to respond or put some type of set up a hearing or something, right? If they're in that process or something that's going to take longer than a few weeks, if it's the middle of winter and they happen to have outside issues on their building that they can't attend to the spring, they aren't going to be getting additional weekly fees because...
If they're working with us, we will work with them.
Okay.
But again, there's men, women, and children living in these units. So it's, if there's an issue with safety or there's an issue with the structure itself, that needs to be addressed.
Okay, this is rental certification.
And I can't stress enough
Yep.
how very small amount of folks this would actually apply to. There's a handful of bad actors. The vast majority of our landlords are good people. They take care of their properties. They actually take care of their properties better than a lot of homeowners do. But there are a handful of bad actors that give them a bad name, and this would apply to them.
Okay. I do appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We will take the vote.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 5.
Mayor Rep, can I ask, oh, sorry.
Yes.
I was going to ask, because when I filed these two resolutions on Wednesday, I actually filed, it was 135 was filed first, and 134, I guess that was filed after. So I just wanted to see if we could still do it in the order. If we do 135 first, that's how I filed it.
Is there a reason that it makes a
Oh,
difference?
it's just two separate issues, yep. It's not,
Two separate issues.
Yeah.
I don't know why it would make a difference which
Okay.
order they're taken in, but
okay, we'll go in this order.
we're fine then? Are you-
Well, I don't know if it's okay to just do 135 first?
Well, I just don't understand the reason for having to switch them around, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Just easier explanation, two different things.
I still don't understand the reason
Okay,
why.
we'll go with
They're
number-
two separate items, so.
If you're not going to, that's
Completely,
fine. We'll go with
two separate
134.
items. And the one she's already read into, well,
Okay,
she was
go
going
ahead.
to read. She was going to read, yes. Go ahead.
Requiring further evaluation, updated descriptions with updated illustrations to see how and if possible will a regulation minimum size college soccer field be able to be constructed on Haynes Park location. And this was requested by Councilmember Warden.
Okay.
So moved.
So you move. Is there a second? Councilmember Harris seconded it. Discussion.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember.
So I
Warden.
put this, again, I put this on as a second thing, but I'll just talk to it on a separate issue here. You know, as a city of Port Huron, we had a presentation that with the college and the city of Port Huron, a potential partnership, which of course completely energized me. It was exciting to see, and you know, to look to see of a potential of not only a soccer program expanding, but also to have a soccer field potentially built there, which could host events and so forth in that neighborhood close by. So the excitement was there. I think it's an outstanding thing that the city of Port Huron, in a partnership with the SC4, I think, you know, they've made a lot of strides of investments in town. And what I did when it came to the soccer field, when you're talking about potentially highest and best use and even potential just only on that site, if it was only on that site, you know, my thought as city council is like, hey, if they're going to be trying to draw some attention, you know, some events, which I looked up and saw the NCAA kind of regulations, and also the National Junior College kind of regulations to host events, and it had, you know, a minimum of 70 yards. And not a lot of people know, you know, soccer field's a soccer field, and kids play on football fields. But when you see that as kind of a minimum thing to give the best opportunity, 70 yards is, for the width, is 210 feet. And I'm thinking, okay, I really hope when we look at this, it's probably not going to fit on just Haynes Park. So my thought with this resolution is to give a chance and to try as city council to say, hey, we appreciate the college, we want to help the college, we want to, you know, could be just an outstanding, anytime they want to expand, improve facilities, expand programs, you know, it could be very, very beneficial not only for the city, the community, the college itself. I'm excited about, and I wanted to put this in there that if they are looking in the resolution as the final, you know, the final as far as what we're asking to be resolved, is just for us as city council to hereby request the city administration to communicate, you know, with the St. Clair Community College, just to evaluate and if and how a regulation minimum size soccer field would be constructed on the Haynes Park. And then really, if it is there and they're doing some other acquisitions now, or they just recently as well, you know, I can picture it being just outstanding in that area for the college to grow. And the college is now taking those steps to make these expansions. So what I just asked, if they are, to have them work on it with the city administration and bring it back to us if it is going to be a soccer field or at that location, to let us see, you know, a better picture, because it's affecting the neighborhoods, but also the neighborhoods they probably might be for it, and the improvement of, you know, the city in that area. So that was my request for that, is just to make sure that when we are doing it, that we're given the best opportunity for not only the city and the college together to the highest and best benefit, and just do, as far as just a little more, you know, if it takes that plus a little more, we'll bring it back to us, or at least show us what they're going to need if they are looking to do that at that location.
I will open it up for discussion, but before I do, I guess I'm a little confused because it's my understanding that the college withdrew their request, so it's a moot point anyways. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I could, I was a little bit surprised to see this dropped off to the clerk's office, as there was no inquiry made in my office to further elaborate on what the plans of SC4 was. The proposal, which has since been retracted by SC4, the proposal, there was a couple things that are important. One, SC4 was committing to build a sports complex. They were committing to legally deed restrict it for the sole use of a sports complex, for 20 years, and they committed to invest at least $500,000. They didn't do that haphazardly. That was a lot of research was put into it. They also stood before here and pledged to the mayor and council, just like the field house, that they would allow high school teams and junior soccer from all around the region to use that for their field. To do that, SC4 was going to build a 55-yard high school size soccer field, because in community colleges you can use 55-yard fields as long as you notate that before the season begins. That would have allowed SC4 to use that field for their games, also allowing all the high schools in the county and all the middle schoolers aged children in the county to use that for their tournaments and games as well. So they designed it with the site plan you have is with a 55-yard field. That they believed was the biggest potential to reach more demographics, not only college, but also high schools and also the junior players from all over the area. They pledged to do that. So I'm just a little bit baffled as to where this came from. But anyways, I have met with the leadership of SC4, and they were very candid. We have a lot of projects going on right now. I don't think they were, it wasn't very diplomatic in how this was done, and they felt that they have so many, I talked to the community college president today, and she candidly told me that we have a lot of things going on, and we don't have time for a, quote, sideshow. So that is why that resolution was pulled. We're not going to be paraded out for public hearings, whatnot, so these two resolutions are the reason why SC4 felt this time they didn't want to engage in this dialogue.
Mayor Rep?
Yes, Councilmember Warden.
I guess I'd just like to read my comments that I filed here for the official minutes today. This is for both resolutions. We have a potential opportunity that's brought to the forefront with the City of Port Huron in partnership with the St. Clair Community College, interested in furthering their expansion, to engage the taxpayers and the property owners around Hayes Park neighborhood, to be involved and to provide some input, some feedback, support, or concerns, and allow for public discussion. With the both of the resolutions filed around noon on December 4th for a council member meeting today, the St. Clair Community College actually on December 5th, the next day, graciously released to the public that they will put on hold the acquisition of Haynes Park and potential vacating of Stanton Street east of Poplar to further evaluate options and to ensure that everyone's making the best decision for the entire community. And that was a quote right from the Times-Herald edition on December 6th. I think it's an important first step for the City Council to act upon these potential resolutions, which actually allow us as the city to hear from the citizens, including the property owners in that neighborhood, will allow for the college to further develop their potential plans for a soccer field or even another concept. The college has taken some great strides recently with the acquisition of the motel downtown and transformed it successfully into a student housing, the $9+ million renovation of the health science building over on campus, and the acquisitions of some properties in the neighborhood north of Glenwood, to name a few. I believe that successful college expansion and improvement of programs and facilities will give the best chance for attraction and for future success. If the city taxpayers are included and if it's done right, the City of Port Huron and the surrounding community can benefit as well.
Discussion from
Thank
the
you.
balance of the council?
Mayor,
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald?
just asking for a point of clarification on what City Manager Freed said. I'm not sure I heard that correctly. Are you saying they withdrew because they didn't want to have to take the time to go through a series of public hearings to determine what the neighborhood wanted?
No, they withdrew because they have several other projects in the community going on right now. This project was well defined on the size of the field, and the notion that there was no research done, the field won't fit, without any type of discussion or inquiry and opportunity to respond before these were put out there, almost try to portray the proposal as inept or not full. And I think right now there's a lot going on, and they just at this time don't want to proceed in that environment.
Thank you.
Discussion from anyone else? I mean, I understand Councilmember Warden's comments here, but I think from my personal perspective, there is no project going forward, so it would be a moot point to further evaluate or go through it because there is no project. They've already said they don't want it, so it would be irrelevant to do any of this. So that's my
They
opinion.
just said in the Times Herald and on the radio and everything, they just said they're just putting it on hold and they're going to evaluate it. So I didn't take that as that they're not interested in it. I think they're interested in working with
The
us.
letter said they were pretty much not interested,
The written communication we have, it says they're done.
which everybody did get a copy of.
Oh, a separate one to us?
Yes.
Okay, well, I
Yes.
just was reading
Yeah.
the paper and
No.
what they were saying out to the rest of the,
They,
okay.
you did get a copy of that
Yeah.
emailed to you, and it was, they just are not interested in doing it anymore.
Oh.
So it would be a moot point in doing any of this, so.
Lastly, it's important to point out that that parcel is not buildable. There's utilities, there's easements for stormwater, so there's no type of building that could ever be built on that, unless all those utilities were moved. So it's not like you're going to get a proposal for any major building there, or, so.
Correct. Is there any other discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
No.
Councilmember Ashford?
What are we voting on?
On number 5, resolution requiring further evaluation, updated descriptions with updated illustrations to see how and if possible, will a regulation minimum size college soccer field be able to be constructed on Haynes Park location?
Well, if nobody's interested, why are we voting?
Well, he has a resolution on the floor. There
I mean,
was a motion and a second, so we need to vote on it.
I feel like I'm playing a game. Okay, so, all right. Boy, it's make me sound like I'm crazy. I guess I'm gonna have to say no, because there's nothing here. I don't know what I would do.
Councilmember Beeden?
No.
Councilmember Harris?
Just explain something to me, maybe, it may be legal counsel. Basically, I would vote for this, but being it's not a factor of possible happening, what,
That's exactly.
what are the implications?
Well, they were never going to build a 70-yard soccer field, as this states anyways. This was never part of the proposal, which is now off the table.
What are you asking?
I was going to ask in council, can we vote on something that's not going to happen?
It's like we're playing a game.
No, I agree, but it is on, you made
It is.
he made a motion, you made a second, it's there,
It is.
unless you'll unless he
second.
withdraws.
As I understand, the initial proposal that generated this proposed resolution has been withdrawn. You do have a motion on the floor, so you do have to vote on it. But it would require, I assume, city management to, the city manager and his staff to further evaluate a project that has been put on hold. So if you
it
vote
was
yes, then you're
yes, yeah.
directing the city manager to do research on something that's been withdrawn.
You got time?
I serve at the pleasure of the mayor and council.
Well,
So yes or no?
I ain't mad at you.
If this resolution basically stated that we required a process in the future that, that there would be parameters set for this soccer field and stuff like that, I would vote yes. But the only reason I'm voting no is because this is talking about something that's not going to happen. If this talked about a future event, Scott, I would support you 100%, but not on this. Thank you.
No.
So your answer is no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilmember Pemberton?
No.
Mayor Rep?
No. Did you want to continue with the next resolution?
I think, yes, the next resolution has nothing to do with the soccer field.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Scheduling a public hearing for the next regularly scheduled city council meeting on January 13th, 2020, and notify in writing by U.S. mail all the property owners located between 10th Avenue and Erie Street, from Glenwood Avenue to Lincoln Avenue, regarding the potential sale of their neighborhood pocket park, Haynes Park, and the potential vacating of Stanton Street from 10th Avenue to Popular Street, and again requested by Councilmember Warden.
So I assume you're making the motion?
So moved, yep.
Does someone want to second the motion? Hearing no second, the motion dies. We'll move on.
Approving, sorry.
Go ahead.
Approving the 3-year agreement with the Port Huron Area School District to assign 2 police officers to serve as school resource officers on the Port Huron Area School District's campuses, beginning with the 2019-2020 school year.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Boy, I got everybody that
I'll
time.
support. I don't know who I'll talk.
Okay, Councilmember Pemberton, and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. And if we could have an explanation, perhaps answer the questions that were asked earlier?
Yes, absolutely. Mayor and council, you have agreement with us, with the Port Huron Area Schools. It calls for a 5% increase now and then a 2% increase in the following 2 years, so 5, 2, and 2. That covers the additional costs of the fringe benefits and wages for the school resource officer. I'm not one to speak to law enforcement issues, so Chief Platzer, if you'd like to give us a briefing on how this program's going, get you some camera time tonight.
Mayor Rep, City Council, the program is going better than we expected. Every time I meet with Jamie Kane and Thea Kahulis, they tell us that Officer Heisman and Officer Phillips are rock stars in the schools. I visit the schools regularly. Officer Phillips is assigned to Port Huron High School. And not only is she assigned to Port Huron High School, but she goes and visits the other schools in her district. So that'd be Woodrow Wilson, Harrison, Cleveland Elementary. So her home base is Port Huron High School, but she visits all the other schools during the day. Officer Heisman's home base is Port Huron Northern, and then he visits Crawl, Garfield, Holland Woods. Since we've had the uniform presence in the school, I mean, it is there for uniform presence, armed security, but both officers have built trust with the students. They're transparent with the students. They've become role models and mentors. It's unbelievable when you go in these schools and listen to the kids, and they come up to you and say that, you know, I was able to go meet with Officer Heisman and talk to him not only about issues in the school, but family issues. And same thing with Officer Phillips. And so these officers have done a tremendous job. I have to agree with Theo that they are rock stars. And that not only are Officer Phillips and Officer Heisman in the schools, but every day our road officers who are assigned certain areas of the city, they do walkthroughs. So if you're assigned to, say, the town south area, we've got officers that will go through East Shore Leadership Academy. They'll go through Harrison. They'll go through Woodrow Wilson. So not only are Officer Phillips and Officer Heisman there, but we also have our road officers that are going through the schools on a daily basis. So we've gotten nothing but positive feedback. I mean, not only are they there during the school day, but they're there after events. Football games, the junior prom, the proms, so their presence is everywhere. So I'm very happy with the school resource officers, and I'd like to see it continue as long as we can.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief?
Mayor Rep?
Yes,
Just a
Councilmember
comment, I think it's outstanding. This is, to have a presence there, building a relationship in those two schools and the different lower level schools there. They know they have somebody they can go to when something may come up, whether it's for safety of the school, but actually they're starting to develop trust with the students, and they might feel comfortable once they get to know the officer to go to talk to them, just to say hey. And I think it's just the impact is far, the benefits are far greater than just you know, again, safety is one thing and having somebody quick response, but to have that police officer right there walking around, they get to know them. I think it's a huge resource and benefit for the school district. So fully supporting this and glad that the Port Huron Area School District and us as the city of Port Huron, we can do this together. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could I just ask a question? It's a little bit off the subject, but you brought up the fact that, you know, that visiting the schools around the area and stuff, and I know I see the DARES officer at Roosevelt every day. But I just noticed today that all the no parking area on 20th Street in front of Roosevelt is now allowed parking. And that's kind of unsettling to me because of, it was a no parking zone for years, that one block and stuff, and now it's for parking. And I just wonder if you could maybe find out what happened there.
Yes, I can look into it because that's news to me.
So,
Guess that's it. Thank you.
Right,
Thank you. We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, that concludes our regular agenda. However, I'd like to bring up an unpleasant subject, which is leaf collection. And contrary to what gets written out on Facebook, I hadn't had my leaves picked up at all until Friday either. So I think someone said that they thought the mayor's have been picked up 3 times, so I'm here to say that they have not. So, doesn't matter who you are, your leaves may not be picked up, so please.
Yes. I heard a few things about the leaf pickup. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. I know we've gotten a lot of comments by email and even on social media. This is to be completely candid. The contractor has not lived up to expectations. They were woefully underprepared with the amount of manpower and equipment to complete the project. It's not just in Port Huron, Marysville and Marine City have issues as well. So we had a heart-to-heart conversation with the contractor this past week. Since that time, they've had 5, sometimes 6 trucks out for the last couple days. I believe they had 5 trucks in the city today. They're going through Zone 2 right now. They will go through Zone 1 to get the spots that were missed. For people who called, if you've been missed, call and let us know, and we will make sure they get your leaves. They will continue until the leaves are picked up. So if you haven't been picked up, they will continue until the leaves are picked up, and we have made that very clear with the contractor. So it has been disappointing that they clearly were woefully unprepared, but I believe they can correct this. And if they don't, then we'll take the steps necessary.
I guess just a comment I would make, because I actually did see this today, was that I did see them out on 10th Avenue picking up the leaves, and I also saw someone going back out and adding more leaves afterwards.
You are correct. I will also say this. When they're clearing streets, they are documenting it. So, I mean, if you're a contractor and you do a street and then someone calls and says you missed them, you only do that enough times where you start photographing and documenting the streets. So the contractor is trying to protect themselves. So if they go by and they clean up your leaves and you rake them out and then call in saying they missed you, just know that there will be some validation there. So that has happened. I don't think it's happened very often, but we have had people who have got called in saying they were skipped when they were raking them out as the truck passed, so.
Okay. Well, I guess on that note, unless the council has something to ask you about the leaf pickup. Anybody? No? Okay, well, we are closed. City offices will be closed December 24th, 25th, 31st, and January 1st, obviously in observance of the holidays. So with that note, I'd certainly like to wish a happy holiday season, or rather even politically incorrect or not, Merry Christmas. And I hope everybody gets the chance to enjoy it with their families and has a good Christmas and New Year's and is safe while they're doing it. So, does anyone else on the council have anything to say?
Mayor?
Councilmember Warren?
I just want to compliment again after the Thanksgiving Thursday, downtown Port Huron, we had I think a very successful, great weather for the Santa Parade. I think I saw you guys, and you welcomed Santa Claus with the key. But the turnout there was a very good turnout. Again, good energy, and also I think some other things in town. We've had a little regional Silver Stick thing that, for young kids. Just this past weekend again. We also had the polar, I think it was called the Polar Bear Plunge over at Lakeside at noon. We just had so much this town. One thing is just be very careful, be thoughtful and thankful for your families, spend quality time, and as we get caught up in the holiday spirit, it really is, we have a great community. Take time, precious life, precious moments with loved ones when you can. And please be safe. Thank you.
If there's not anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
James.